This week, we're going to be focusing on evaluations. When I think of an evaluation, I typically will think of my performance review at work, something that I sit down with my boss and we go through step by step things about what I can improve on and what I'm currently doing well. That's not quite what we're doing. That might be a good framework that you can look at, but that's not quite what we're doing this week. So an evaluation is really just something like a four-star review, like you're writing a movie review or a Yelp review. Maybe you're a food critic and you're writing about all the restaurants in town or writing about a specific meal at a restaurant, or just the movie, the type of reviews that you most likely do most often are an Amazon review or a product review on Amazon. These are the things, the mindset that you want to get into this week with the type of review you're going to be writing. So what you're really doing is just evaluating something, giving a four-star, five-star review. One of the best things you can do before you write is just to think about what you're going to do. So just take some time and maybe do a little bit of studying, because to write a good review, it can be difficult. I've written plenty of reviews and I consider myself a good writer, but I'm not saying that any of my reviews would help anybody in the manner of wanting to purchase a product, just because they can be difficult to write. So I've got some suggestions for you. First and foremost, you want to definitely read the example from the book. There's a movie review that is in here, and just take a look at it, read through it, see what has been done. Do a Google search. One of the things that I like to do when I've got a little bit of free time sometimes is to read like hilarious Amazon reviews. And sometimes these reviews have nothing to do with the product, and but they still draw attention to the product because of some of the things that are in there. So do a Google search on, after you've read in the book, do a Google search on best Amazon reviews or best food reviews or best movie reviews, and read professionals. There are professional movie critics, there's professional food critics, there's professional sports evaluators, people that are writing this stuff on the regular. So instead of thinking about what you've written in the past, take a look at what the professionals have done and read their reviews. Like look at Siskel and Ebert if you're doing a movie review, or one of the reviewers that reviews a lot of food. But also definitely be mindful of what you're reviewing, because some people are just reviewing to get a reaction. So they might write things in an inappropriate manner. So just take that into account as you're working on your pieces. So what makes a good review? There are a bunch of things that are in the review, things that you need to think about as you're writing, or think about before you write. So take a look at these features here. So first off, you want to have a concise description of your piece. If you are doing a movie review, you need to talk about the plot, you need to talk about the acting, you need to talk about the direction, you need to talk about the writing, talk about the dialogue. If you're talking about food, you would want to talk about the presentation of the food on the plate, what the food tasted like. If was it spicy or not spicy enough? Was there too much salt? You need just a concise description, because for your readers to understand what you are talking about, they need to have a full picture of everything that you're working on. You also need a basis of judgment. So, why are you the one that people should listen to? Where are you coming from? Are you a writer and you liked the way that the story was told in a movie or in a book? Where is your background? You also need to make sure you have a defined audience because different audiences are going to come to different things based on the type of writing that is done. So there are different avenues of writing that is done in the movie review business, for example. There's some that take movie reviews very seriously and they talk about the art and the coloring and the the direction and the writing and the acting. And then there's some that take it in a very snarky point of view. And so you need to make sure that your audience is defined. Who are you writing to? You can write a funny review for this assignment. You can write a funny evaluation. It doesn't need to be very cut and dried. It doesn't need to be like academic in the sense of using the very academic language. So make sure your audience is defined. Who would you want to read this? Is this something like you're going to try to be funny with your review, or you're trying to be very descriptive of it? Just think about that. Um, as I said earlier, you need to make sure you give all the vivid details and be specific with your details. Don't just say that it was served on a plate if you're talking about a food review. Say if it was served on an oval plate and it was dressed in this manner, or um, the talk about the movie characters and who played them and how the character looked as they were playing them. Because if you are writing about something and you just say the main character did this or the main character did that, it's not going to be specific enough. So give us some vivid details as you're writing. Make connections as well. So um, you can you can draw comparisons and contrasts to two different things. So if you're writing about a food, you could say this food is um, better than your favorite place right now. So let's say you are reviewing a hamburger at a diner. You could say this is definitely better than my favorite hamburger that I found at this very expensive restaurant in town. Or you can say it's no better than a McDonald's hamburger. So just make some connections so there are people that might not be familiar with exactly what you're writing about, that they can extrapolate some things and get some ideas of exactly what you're talking about. If you're talking about actors, talk about how they acted in that movie in comparison to another. Sometimes bad acting happens not because of an actor, but because of the director that they are attached to. So make some connections there. You could, if it was Tom Hanks, for example, you could say Tom Hanks acted very well in this movie, and it was typical Tom Hanks fare, much like how he acts in, and then name a couple other his movies that he has acted very well in. So think about making the connections so there are some other things, because if you're writing a movie review, typically people will be reading it before they go to a movie. So you would want them to see how it relates to things that they already have a frame of reference on. Definitely you want to do a full discussion about the subject. So you're going to talk about things from top to bottom. If it's a movie review, you might give away the ending or the twist. I do suggest if you're doing a movie review and you're going to be doing something like that and you want to write it on on a popular movie that maybe has a twist ending, then or publish it onto a website or something, then you would want to maybe warn about spoilers that are coming. But we're not going to be worrying about those right now. But definitely have a full discussion about the subject. Talk about the ins and outs and everything that you need to. Don't just say this was a good movie. I like the beginning. I like the middle. I like the end. Talk about the full discussion. You're talking about a meal. Talk about the whole meal. Talk about the restaurant as it relates to the meal. Talk about the seating in the restaurant, that kind of thing. So discuss the whole thing. And also give a fair assessment. Now, you are giving your opinion, but you are not necessarily giving the assessment that is just I'm right and you're wrong. Give it a fair assessment. There are good things about every bad thing. Some of the worst movies have some of the funniest lines, and that might not be because the writing is bad or the acting is bad, but just because of the way that it was written, the way that it was done, and acted, it can become funny. So give it a fair assessment. There are good things even with the bad. Even if you didn't like a dish in a restaurant, there is maybe the service was good, or the table was set nicely, or the restaurant was overall nice, and maybe you got a bad cook that night, that kind of thing. So give it a fair assessment. This is not a time to completely destroy a product or destroy a movie or something. So be balanced in your assessment. So this should be a balanced point of view that you want to build where you do give the good with the bad. So just make sure that you are across the line being fair in your assessment. You don't want to just weigh the bad things. Now, that does not mean that you have every bad thing you have to write a good thing, but um, try to point out if you feel it's just a terrible thing, give at least one or two pros. If you're like a product review that you might give a 1 star, there's got to be something about it. Why did you purchase it in the first place? There's a reason that you purchased it. And maybe it was the price point, or maybe it was the coloring, or something like that. So try to be balanced in your point of view on that. You do definitely need to give your supported evidence for your review. So the supported evidence that you give could be something like, I've been to this restaurant 3 or 4 times, and the hamburger is always bad, or the steak is always bad. And support the evidence. Maybe you could find out about the cook and see if they are classically trained. They went to college to learn how to be a cook, or went to culinary school, or maybe they just learned on the job. So support your evidence in some manner. So this means that you've got to do some research on the subject itself. And you do want to give your opinion, but definitely don't overstate it. Don't be heavy on I hate this or I love this. Try to write your review in a way that your readers would understand that you like or dislike something without using the words like or dislike. So try to do your best of giving your opinion without letting your readers know that your opinion is being given. So you need to think about how to write this evaluation, the things to look at, the things to think about. One of the first things you need to do is brainstorm, do some pre-writing, do some preparation to writing your whole paper. What you need to do is limit your subject. So one of my favorite directors is Alfred Hitchcock. He writes, or not write, he directed some great movies, some of my favorite movies. And if I were evaluating Alfred Hitchcock, I would not talk about all of his movies. There were too many. There's just way too many movies to review. So I would choose one that I thought was particularly descriptive of Alfred Hitchcock's work in general. So maybe I would talk about one of his movies instead of all of the movies. Or if it's a TV show that you really like, you wouldn't talk about all 11 seasons of a show. you would talk about maybe one episode. Or, and this might be a little bit more difficult, just write about one season. Maybe there was a story arc that went through an entire season. But see, as you're doing this, you're going to have um, to review what you're doing. So what I mean by review what you're doing, what you're writing on, is you're going to want to study your subject. So if you're writing about an entire season, it will be hard to watch the season this week as you're working on writing this project. So what you need to do is research your subject. So watch the movie that you're reviewing 3 or 4 times. Take notes as you're writing, as you're watching. I mean, um, if you're going to evaluate a product, take a look at the product. Have the product in hand. Look at all the different angles of it. Think about the buying and the selling process. How difficult or easy was it for you to purchase this? If you're going to be evaluating a meal at a restaurant, then go to the restaurant once or twice. Order the same meal so you can see what it's going to taste like during a busy time as opposed to a time when the cook has some more time to pay attention to the order. Um, Answer the questions like, did you like this or did you not like it? You need to pay attention to the different things that you would care about. And then definitely find the point of view. As I stated before, this is going to be your opinion, but you need to find the point of view and find the direction that you want to enter the subject. So as with the other papers that we do, you need to consider the rhetorical situation. So as with before, we want to understand the purpose. Is your purpose of writing this to sway your audience? Do you want no one ever again to go to this restaurant and eat this meal? Or do you want everybody, all of your friends, to go see the movie? Are you writing it to help your audience decide something? Also think about your audience. Who are you writing to? There are plenty of movie review sites that take things from a snarky point of view. There are different movie review sites that I go to, and I go to them specifically because I want to laugh as I'm reading this movie review. So who are you writing to? Who is going to read this? If it's an Amazon review and you're writing to people that are looking for 1-star reviews, then consider that. Also, what is the stance? What's your tone? Is there something that you need to discuss that's in there? Are you going to be sarcastic through the entire review? Or are you going to be straightforward? Are you going to give everything as a direct line? And then is there media you need to include in this writing? So are there images of the movie or clips or things? Now, with that being stated, if you do use clips from movies, you need to make sure that they are put out by the movie studio instead of just some that you can find on YouTube or online. So that you need to make sure that you're getting things that you are legally allowed to show, because movies are definitely copywritten, and the the content within them is very proprietary. Generating the text is something that you're going to be doing next. So let's take a look at that. Some ways you can do this is you could just free write. Take a look at the subject that you're going to want to write about and just free write. Go write a page or two without really thinking about the direction that you're going. Just see see how your feelings come out on the page, because you might be writing and you realize there are more things you like about this subject than you thought you did in the first place. Think about what you know about the subject as well. Have you watched, for instance, all of the movies that Alfred Hitchcock has directed? How can you draw from that into this specific movie review? Have you been to all of the area restaurants that serve this certain type of steak? What do you know about it? So find your base of knowledge and then write from that. What are your feelings on the subject? Do you have a specific feeling? Did you go to this movie and just be like, ah, this is okay? Or did you go and say, I really, really like this movie, all my friends should see it, or I really hated this movie, nobody should see this? As I said earlier, you need to evaluate the subject, study it. If you're writing a movie review, watch the movie 2 or 3 times, 3 or 4 times. And just because you've seen a movie 3 or 4 times in the past doesn't mean that you can easily evaluate it right now. So if you've seen the movie a bunch of times, it's one of your favorites, but you haven't seen it in a while, then watch it once or twice more, because there's plenty of movies that I love, that I have seen many times, but maybe I haven't seen it in such a long time and my point of view has changed. Maybe I watched the movie and I don't necessarily like it anymore. There are movies that I have in my library that I am probably never going to watch again and will be getting rid of because it doesn't fit my personal taste or my worldview anymore. You need to compare the subject. Look at the things that has been done. So you would compare the let's say you would compare the Alfred Hitchcock's movie Psycho to North by Northwest. Those are two of my favorites. So I would talk about the different ways that the story comes across. Psycho is basically a horror movie, and it's very, very filled with drama and suspense. While North by Northwest is not a horror movie, it is a comedy, but it's a comedy thriller. There's more funny things in North by Northwest than anywhere involved in Psycho. So you would compare the subjects. Say that you enjoyed the way that Hitchcock did this scene in Psycho, and it was better than was done in North by Northwest. So things like that. You can start as your thesis as a judgment. So this would just be tentative, like um, I do not like the way this movie started, or I generally don't like vegetarian meals, but at this restaurant, this vegetarian meal was fantastic. Things like that. And then acknowledge or refute other opinions. So there's going to be people that are reading your review that are going to feel different than you are. You need to point out, like, yes, I know that some people have enjoyed this movie, and I know that they're looking at this aspect of the movie, but I don't think that's so great. So think about, as you're writing, know who they are, know what they are going to throw at you, like the trolls that might come in as reading your subject, and know what they're going to throw at you, so you always have an answer for what they're going to say. And then support your reasons. If you're going to have an opinion, you gotta have something to back it up with. You can't just write your opinion and not have something more to support that. So you've done all this thinking about what you're going to write about. You've done some practice, some beginning things. Now it's time to organize the ideas into something that is going to be a concise paper. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can start with the subject. So this is starting with what you're evaluating. Describe what you're evaluating. This is a movie. This is who is in it. This is the plot. This is the general idea. So you can start with the subject. You can describe things from that point of view. Um, then you state what you are judging. Like, did I like this or not? Give some reasons and some evidence, and then acknowledge the other opinions, and then you restate your opinion. So give your overall judgment. So if you start with a subject, start with that. Or the other side, you can start with a criteria. So this would look something like this. Out of all Hitchcock movies, and there are many great ones and there are a few bad, there's one that stands out on away from the others, and that is Psycho. So you're identifying the criteria. You're talking about all of the movies that Hitchcock has done and how great some of them are. And you can even say this, I'm I'm doing a 5-star review on this movie, and the reason for that is because even though there's all these other great movies, this one stands a step above the rest. Then you would describe what you are evaluating, and then evaluate it against each of your criteria. Um, so you like if you broke it up. Um, Alfred Hitchcock has written many great thrillers. He's been not written. He has directed many great thrillers. He's directed many great horrors. He's directed many great spy movies. And then just compare this one to that and how the criteria relate to this. And then last, you would state your overall judgment. So yeah, here's all these movies, but here's all these reasons, but, and then you would say, finally, the reason why this one's the best, or the reason why this is the worst, that kind of thing. So go in that direction. Then after you've done all of this, you need to take stock of what you've done. You need to think about the writing that you have done. And I suggest you do this every single time. So write your draft, read through it, just think about what you have written. So definitely think about the work. Think about how you feel about it. Can your work be improved? Is it possible that you need to tighten up some things? You need to supply more evidence. Do you need to do better research? So maybe you've written the paper completely, and maybe you need to watch the movie one more time. You need to go to that restaurant one more time. You need to take a look at that product one more time. Maybe look at the packaging now instead of just how the package was when you received it. Look at the box that the toy came in. Think about that. And were there any outside influences? For the longest time, I did not watch one of the movies in the James Bond series, and that was simply because my dad did not like the movie. He's a big James Bond fan, and he didn't like the movie. And so when I was younger, I just didn't watch that movie. I thought it was going to be bad because he had a good evaluation of all the movies because he had seen most, if not all, of the other James Bond movies from going back to the first one. And so my influence was was swayed because my dad did not like this one movie. So I eventually saw the movie and I thought it was pretty good. So what I was able to do is tell my dad, this movie, I think you need to give it a second chance. And he thought it was pretty good as well. So I was able to remove the outside influence and watch the movie with a new set of eyes. And that also helped me enjoy the movie because I had this negative viewpoint that I was going to go into with watching the movie. And I saw this really isn't as bad as I thought it would be. And then you need to look at possibly what will others think? Am I going to be destroying the restaurant down the street? And maybe I happen to know the owner's children, or I happen to know the owners themselves. What are the owners going to think when they read the food review or the restaurant review? So you do need to consider that. Um, you need to consider how other people will receive your writing. Is there anything you need to do a little bit different? Do you need to not not hold your opinion back, but you need to worry about, not worry is the wrong word. You need to consider what others are definitely thinking as they're reading your stuff. So just think about that. Don't think about what I'm going to be doing it, but if this were published somewhere, what are others going to think? Evaluations are fun to write, and they can really help you thinking about a product or a movie or something in a little bit of a different light. And it's a good thing to have in your writing tool belt.